Alrighty, okay, folks. Welcome everybody. How you doing? This is episode. What episode is this? 11. Episode 11 of Citizen Central. I hope you can hear me. Sometimes it acts a little weird with us, but I think we're good. Today, my friends, we're talking mining. We're talking 319, a big new feature. Well, not a new feature actually. A big new update to an existing feature has changed things up a little bit. And I wanted to gather a few folks from around YouTube today to determine whether or not mining has finally reached a state that I think, or we think, is sustainable long term. So we got the boys in here. You guys have all really done something mining related lately, whether it be a guide or a review or some sort of feedback. But I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves to everybody here and tell them a little bit more about the context of why you're here and why you're interested in mining. So we'll start from the top corner and just go clockwise. SaltEMike, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
I was going to say, hopefully I'm not muted. I was. I just love mining. I've always played in MMOs. I've always kind of went the industrial route, crafting route. So when I saw what they were planning on doing with this one and having it be a little bit more hands-on, I was more excited about it. So I'm just super into it. I have not put out my guides yet as much as all the guys that are here, but I definitely have done quite a bit of it on stream and talked about it quite a bit and provided some feedback on it. So yeah, it's just one of my favorite aspects of the game. And I think I'm fairly knowledgeable with it, but I'm just more passionate about it than anything.
I think back when we did back when I was first kind of getting into YouTube, and I think I invited you on for the podcast and we started to talk a little bit more. Mining was one of the things that we had focused on. So I was really interested in seeing what you had to say about this. I look forward to hearing your comments today. Red Monster, my man, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm RedMonsterSC. You probably have seen me on YouTube. I've got guides for mining and salvage, industrial focused gameplay as well. And I also stream on Twitch Monday nights, Friday nights, and Sunday mornings. Every Sunday morning, my group does a group mining session. All skill levels are welcome, and we go out and have a pretty interesting organized operation. So I think it demonstrates the potential of massive group play for a lot of folks that are looking at industrial and trying to learn those. So
I look forward to hearing about that. I've only done probably 2 mole operations, kind of like SaltEMike, what we did the other week. But it sounds like you can get pretty expansive. So I look forward to hearing more about that. Croncy, my man, tell us more.
Yeah, I'm Croncy. I've been playing Star Citizen for probably about 4 years now, so probably not as much as some of the other experienced players that we've got here. But one of the first things that I ever got to do because of that was actually mine in a mole, my friend's mole. And I was immediately hooked. I absolutely love mining in EVE Online and pretty much any MMO I get my hands on, I'm mining. Even RuneScape back in the day, I was a dedicated miner. So always something that I was really curious to check out, and was really happy to hear that it was a lot more hands-on in Star Citizen. So been enjoying it a lot, been enjoying streaming, been enjoying doing some YouTube stuff and talking with all of these nerds.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Croncy's, your YouTube video recently, I loved watching it pop off. It was really cool. Glad that's gotten your YouTube channel going a little bit more, because I've been liking the videos, man.
Yeah, cheers.
LoudGuns, how are you, dude? What are you doing with mining?
Very good. I sort of, unlike Mike, I historically in MMOs have always gone down the PvP route, and that's been more my focus. But Star Citizen was probably the first game where I tried the industrial side and I was just hooked. It was just like I kind of love it because it's sort of doing the industrial gameplay, but still in a bit of a dangerous universe, hopefully.
Yeah, Star Citizen has felt like such a combat-focused game for so long. It's really nice to start to see industry taking a bit of the spotlight. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody, if you're interested in their content, we'll have that down in the show notes below or linked in the chat for all of you who are here with us live. But let's jump straight into things. So mining's been around. It was like one of the first professions added besides cargo and combat. And it's been kind of iterated on for a good long time now. Can you guys summarize those first 4 to 5 years of what mining gameplay was so that we can kind of set the stage for how things have shifted now? anybody can start us off and fill in the gaps where you see fit.
I guess I'll go. I think what the first bit of time was just fleshing out the thing that the player was going to touch. So the raising and lowering the mining laser and figuring out what they wanted to do with that, the size of maybe the art assets of certain things, but and I think that they nailed it from the start of just making it an interesting thing to do. There was a bit of challenge, there was a bit of risk, and there was obviously the reward, right? And then they just gradually uh incredibly slowly, I think, built it up from there for a while, and then bang, we had this huge update in 318 319 time, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I think that's they started out right away. I think it was probably most fleshed out thing we had. It was the thing they worked on the most over those years, and then um I think people got kind of pissed, and they were like, "All right, let's do this last update with the gadgets." God, when was that?
It's like a year ago.
316, 317?
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And where they were like, "Yeah, mining's hard, so we need to give these gadgets." And I'm sure all of us four here were like, "Mining's hard?" Like, what? Right? Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? And yeah, so they kind of missed the mark on that one, and we're like, "Damn, we actually have to come back to mining." And the way they came back to it was like open eyes, open ears for everyone in the community, and I think they were awesome. Yeah, so
Without spoiling, obviously, like the later talking about what's been happening with
Sure.
319, would you say that the new fix helped with what felt like a lackluster addition with gadgets?
yes.
Okay.
It fixed everything nearly.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Nearly.
So
Yeah, nearly.
you made a
Yeah.
good point there that after they implemented it, we basically were just kind of sitting and getting an update maybe once a year or so on various little things surrounding the profession. How did you guys feel about those updates? Did you feel like they were just kind of throwing stuff out there to give us new things, or were they headed in a direction? What was your thinking during that time?
I'll go for this one. So it was very interesting seeing, when mining was sort of initially concepted, we had a couple of minerals that were worth mining, and you'd go for certain percentages, a couple of bits of garbage, and it was already sort of in the stage of, there's not much variation here. They then decided to bring in Quantanium and completely destroy mining and make it a one-trick pony, and there was only really one thing worth doing. They then brought in refining, which was a really good sort of idea for, hey, how is this going to work going forwards? But once again, even though they had given us a lot of variation, there was not much reason to use many of the different things. Like, most of the time, you were still going to use Dynic solventation if you were, mining for long enough.
Yeah.
And then they brought in the gadgets, which, like Mike said, were basically completely pointless, except for really funny, like, Twitch clips. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like they were coming up with these really good ideas. They just weren't implementing them particularly well until 319.
Okay. And one of the things I think is most interesting, probably, that people are still very anxious about hearing about, and I think we'll talk about this later on when we talk about the future of mining, but SaltEMike mentioned the art assets. They were always boulders, just kind of boulders they placed on the planet's surfaces or asteroids floating in space. How did you guys feel about that implementation as opposed to, say, like veins of ores or something like that?
I mean, I would love to see like some proper veins to hack away at. And that would be a future thing I'd love to see. Sort of proper seam that you could go and mine over a period of time, keep going back to. People sort of over time would get to know that you're there, create that competition either between miners or with pirates. So I think that could be amazing. But the boulder implementation, I mean, it wasn't necessarily great, but it does work. So there is that.
Yeah.
Doesn't it kind of feel like hull stripping to salvage right now, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, all right, we're doing the surface level, but at some point we'll get the real feature.
Yeah.
like the vehicle munching or whatever, you know.
Well, and
Yeah.
is it going to be a long-term potential based on how the planet terrain maps are generated? And we're looking at right now the boulders are kind of voxel-based assets, where other mining games they have that voxel type. Where I don't think our planet surfaces are designed to have that unless we have a specific, like with outposts, you have an exclusion zone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like are we going to be mining the surface with ships or with outposts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions for future mining, which I look forward to hearing all your answers on a little bit later. But I agree. It does feel kind of like that early salvage implementation was where we were at, like in 3.1? I think they added mining or something like that. So you said that it took a while, and I think that's a good segue. We are now seeing salvage come in. First was hull scraping in 3.18. Then we're seeing physical component removal in 3.19. Now we're potentially talking about hull munching in 3.20, or maybe the patch that comes after that. Definitely like a discrepancy in the amount of time they're spending developing. Do you think they learned a lot from developing mining and now they're applying that to salvage? Or do you think that they've gone a separate way with salvage and they're kind of realigning the way they make professions?
I think they're taking what they've learned from mining and the iterative experience. I think the first initial implementation was like 3.4, and we're now 3.19, where they're still making 15 patches later. Getting into hull stripping, it's, I think we're going to see what they've learned from mining as far as the complexity of the gameplay and the balance they need to bring through the economy, as well as like the challenges. So adding in Quantanium was a late feature for mining. I think they're going to, now that they understand the modules gameplay, we got that to start, and that's going to, I think, move in to the future as we get into the actual ship munching and breaking down of large chunks. They'll learn from kind of what the community feedback has been, like what has worked well with mining for the variety of gadgets and devices that you can use. So.
I think like looking back at the, since we're still kind of on talking about the old days, the taking the feedback from the community and actioning it wasn't happening very quickly then, and I think that's why it took to get to the point. And I don't even know if the feedback that we were given was even really being received in any proper way because of the decisions that they might have been making on, like the gadget example that I gave and stuff like that. It was, I think it was pretty obvious that the issues were always the rocks and not necessarily the way we mined or what we mined with or the modules or anything like that as much. It was more of a rock issue than anything for me. And it took a while for that feedback to get there. And I don't want to spoil anything, but like now that we're where we are, it's a very different experience with them. Things are being actioned like instantly. And we're seeing that with salvage, we're seeing that with mining, and I think we can expect to see it with most features going forward. It seems like they're kind of in a good place for once, finally, when it comes to stuff like this.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and we see that like with locations teams, the people who are working on like the underground facilities, they're finally able to take it from like concept to actually being worked on. You can tell they're actually talking to missions people in the process to get a better idea of narrative teams involved. Like it does feel beyond mining, like you said, in various parts of gameplay, like they've finally got a grasp of a direction where they're headed with this stuff. Red Monster, go ahead.
Yeah, and we see some of that community focus drive even with 318 PTU. We got tier 0 crafting implemented because tractor beams were such a necessity for mining or for salvage to move those boxes around. They said, hey, like why not throw in the ability to craft your multi-tool and your attachment from the RMC dispenser. And that was a quick addition in there that they obviously, as people were like, hey, I hate getting out to a salvage claim and forgetting that I've got I left my multi-tool at home, or that some game-breaking bug, I was playing last night and my multi-tool just got yeeted off into space after getting knocked over by something. So like you've got a necessary equipment to bring along, and they I think they've tried to incorporate that in a more intelligent way from the start. So
Module crafting for mining, anybody? Let's go.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Overall, it's kind of like their ships. It's like the longer that it took them to make the profession, the better it seems like they are at making it. Salvage is having a bit of a better time, and like you said, getting feedback and acting on that feedback faster, which is nice. So
it's called pipelines.
the pipelines and the
pipelines.
tools.
The pipelines.
The staggered development. We can bring all the words out. I got a bingo sheet.
Everybody at home just took a shot.
The only word that we can't bring out. So I think it's the only thing that isn't happening.
So 319 is the big mining updates. Why we're here. Let's dive into it. How has it been flipped on its head? I'll let's say each person pick like one major thing that you really appreciate from this mining update and give us some depth on it. What do you, I might have the call to prayer in the background. Ignore that. What is it that really captures you with this update? Let's start with you, Croncy.
Probably the biggest thing is that we have variety and we have a reason to use that variety once again in mining, whether that's loadouts, location, the certain minerals that we want to go after. There is reason to do more than just one thing, which is all we've really been doing for the last 2 years. So by far the biggest thing. Although Red will argue with me about the location thing, which I'm sure he's going to get into at some point about some of the distribution of minerals. But overall, it's just, they just made it better, right? The only thing that didn't really get touched is rock mining, because we also, something that does need to get mentioned, obviously, is the new Janelite that we got for hand mining. So ship mining significantly better. Hand mining got a little bit of a buff. Still like to see some rock mining stuff, but yeah.
It's kind of a bummer that rock mining didn't get a big update, because a lot of people like it. It's really good, like kind of multi-crew, multi-person gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the things I actually do not like rock mining, but it's one of those things where it's like, I like that it exists, and I know that people really enjoy that gameplay style, so I want them to have something.
Yeah. LoudGuns, how about you? What are you seeing?
Probably, if I got to pick out just one thing, it's going to be the fact that multi-crew mining is now viable as a thing. While solo mining is still viable, absolutely, but multi-crew mining has a place, and I just think the fact that there are challenges that actually require more people to work together. And sort of one of the best moments recently was like 5 of us sat around scratching our heads trying to work out what we needed to add to crack this particular 120k mass rock. It was just like genuinely having to stop mining to talk about what we might be missing. It was just great. It was just a great experience.
That's actually really cool. How much money do you guys know how much money you made from that rock, or have you turned it in yet?
Oh, well, we cracked it, and there was a giant cheer that went up when it split. And then we screwed up the secondary break, and we all blew up and went cartwheeling off into space. So I think the adrenaline was too up from having done the first break, and we lost it on the second.
Well, it's the little victories, right? I mean, you got the first one. That's mission accomplished.
And that's what video editing's for.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of do a little outro, like, yeah, we turned it in. We're good.
you always look like an expert when you're the one behind the editing screen. So
yeah. That's the great part about it. Do you find that, I guess this is a question just branching off of that for all of you. Do you find that the bigger rocks like that bring a lot of materials and minerals, are they worth the time it takes for you to sit down, strategize, maybe switch out components and put a gadget on the rock? Or is it still sort of not balanced out in a way that you look forward to doing that as much?
I think it depends. Yeah, exactly. Like I had a 130k mass 30% Quantanium rock. That was worth the time.
Okay.
And turns out we only needed one mole to break it, and it was super easy, which was like insane. And I was not recording. I don't have the clip. I think there's a Twitch clip of it, but it was nuts. Yeah, so it was just super easy to break. The green zone was like really low. So if you raise the green zone, it goes out from the middle and it hit the bottom. So there was no power needed to break it, essentially. So it was just like a screw up.
That is very nice.
We had 4 moles. We took like an hour and a half trying to figure out how to break it. And then the first mole that goes, breaks the rock instantly. We were like, what? And then we 30K'd before we could start the next break. But
gosh.
just to finish the story off, it's not bad. Then we wait about 20-30 minutes, join the server again, come back, and the rock is still there. All of our moles are still there. We get all the moles are floating. We get onto the moles and we break the remaining breaks, and I made 1.2 million, something like that.
Yes.
Off of it. Yeah.
That's a whole round trip roller coaster story of Star Citizen right there. I like that.
Everything.
That's
like
good.
It all came together.
Dude, it punches you, kicks you in the face while you're down, and then gets you up and like brushes you off. It's like, you know what, you're good. You got through it. Thank you. Except most of the time it doesn't actually brush you off. But that's cool. Over a million. I got lucky. Over $1 million for a rock is like, even if, like you said, you were using one mole, you had 4 people, that's still 250,000 per person for however long that takes. That's not bad. So you guys think that like the money that you're earning from mining is worth the time? You feel like it's a good balance right now?
I don't think so. I think it's less than what Quantanium used to be. And, obviously I don't want to put too much into the factoring of lost components and spares and stuff due to server issues, because those are we hope temporary. But I think overall the amount of your money you're going to earn mining now is going to be lower than what you were doing before with Quantanium. Even though they boosted the prices for Bexylite, Terranite, and gold, I think you're still getting so much of that extra, like the common materials in. They're taking up a third of your inventory, plus whatever in the middle. Like those higher value materials only come up, between like 20 and 50%. I'd say like 30 is mostly average. But it's lower profit per run. Maybe you can get the runs in quicker than with just straight Quantanium mining. But my experience so far is it's been less profitable up to this point.
I mean, I would say, if I can, go ahead, Loud. Go ahead.
Just the one thing which I would say is I think they have planned ahead a little bit in terms of, I think they've planned the mining loop to fit into the refining loop. And so once we factor in not having to travel X million kilometers from mining location to refinery, I think that the nerf to overall rates per hour might that will take some of the weight out of that.
Yeah, I was going to say more along the lines of just because it was so broken before. Yeah. Yes, sure, we're making less money, but I also look at it, similar to what Loud was saying, but tying it more towards like potential crafting in the future, is that I don't look at like I think the question maybe a little bit is flawed, Tomato, because I don't look at the amount of money that I'm making from these items, and that's not what excites me right now. What excites me is the possibility of what happens after I refine, and it's not just selling at a TDD anymore. It could be something bigger and better and more important. Yeah. And I think the whole system sets up for that to be more fun. And like, while Red is 100% correct, it's not as good as going to Lyria, looking for doubles or triples, and then mining. It was too easy. Everything was too simple and too easy before. So sure, we make a little bit less, but I think most of us would agree here, you're having more fun, right? And like, you could see the future a little bit more would be my thing, is where I'm at with it. It's just so much more fun.
Yeah. And that's why it's mainly about, is it worth it? Because you could be making a lot less money, but if the fun is there, if the game enjoyment is there, if it feels like the Star Citizen dream, if the goal of what Star Citizen gameplay is trying to do is there, I think it does feel worth it even with the less money. And that's probably one of the more interesting angles of the whole mining update, is that it is kind of preparing us for an economy. We're seeing whispers of quantum economy finally in the monthly reports. They've talked a little bit about crafting. We know that the cargo refactor is coming with loading timers and physical loading fees. So like, they're gearing up for the economy, and this could be a nice little preview of the direction they're going in. I've always wondered, what are we going to expect in terms of like earnings in this game? Are we going to see all of the prices boosted a ton and we're expecting to make profits in the 1 to 500,000 range? Or are we going to see it kept kind of conservative like it is now and balanced out, and we should expect to be earning jobs that only give us 10 to 20 to 30,000 UEC in profit?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to point out. Yes, we are making less money than we were making before 319, but I have been a big advocate, probably for the last year, that we have been making way too much money mining
Yes.
for the
Right.
past year. Way
Yeah.
too much money compared to a lot of the other gameplay loops. So I'm totally okay with that taking a bit of a cut, because it's still an enjoyable gameplay loop. And you're still making a decent amount of money. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with making 100 to 200k UEC per hour compared to when we were making 400 to 500k UEC.
That's a ton.
Right?
To,
Like,
to
yeah.
me, 100,000 an hour is a ton still.
Exactly, right? So I think it's completely fine. I also don't think it's taken too much of a hit for the most part. If you are, focusing, one of the things that it really brings into it in this patch is, are you risking, scanning for longer to get your Bexelite, Taranite, Gold, Quantanium, or are you just going to the first rock that you can see that's got a decent amount of a pretty solid uncommon material like beryl?
Yeah.
And there's going to be play styles that are involved in that as well. So it's a completely different system. You can't really say, is profit the main driver?
And like Mike was saying, when crafting comes in and other options of refining come in, it again changes. You're not worried about the profit. You're only worried about what you can do with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, once you hit 50 million on your account, what does money even mean in the game? It doesn't mean anything, really, right? So
it means you go buy yourself your 890 jump and live the luxury life, obviously.
yeah, exactly.
It's like an element of knowing what we don't know. So like right now, it's pretty much everything about what the end game economy is going to look like. So I have heard a couple of comments along the lines of I've just melted my prospector, and I'm not knocking those people if they're not enjoying mining, they're not enjoying it. Probably don't need a prospector, but trying to pick ships you want for Star Citizen 1.0 is impossible to do right now because we just don't know where anything's going to land.
Yeah.
There could be 5 solo miners by that point.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
More mining ships.
If you're picking the litter.
Let's go back to the original question of kind of picking something from this update that really stood out to you of making a big difference to mining. I think Red Monster, you were gonna go on next.
The update I think that made the biggest difference. The mineral densities now. The fact that we can have a really ridiculously large, huge mass tungsten and gold deposit, that are 100k plus. That doesn't translate like it used to. It wouldn't be 200 SCU. It's because of that density factor. It's brought down a lot more. It's something you got to consider going through, but it makes it feel more real, right? The more dense materials are gonna take more power to break, and I think that's been really interesting to watch and kind of play around with. The balance of common materials. Do you go for something with high mass if you know that you're going with a fully crew, or for solo prospectors, going for those locations where you've got aluminum and quartz that are the lowest densities, trying to make that decision location wise. And I think it brings a little bit of variety into your foresight and planning to, I want to go here because of those low density materials, but I think they could do more on driving the mineral density. They've done good work with the common materials, but that's not what people are after. They're after the uncommon and the rares, the higher value.
Not yet.
But it does feel like it's making sense. Like you can go into the game and be like, okay, I know this is where I need to go if I want to do this.
More or less. I think there's still a lot of work to be done because the common materials are mostly what we're trying to avoid scooping right now because they're the new inert, right?
Yeah, the issue is they've communicated that the common materials would be used in crafting a lot, but there is no crafting to use them. So they set up where they are on the planets, I think, really well in terms of, okay, if I'm looking for copper, I now know I have a list of planets I can go to find it. But none of us want copper.
Yeah, it's like, why are you looking for copper?
four specific materials. That's it, right?
Okay,
instead of one, which is good, but yeah.
But has this ever been the case in the game where you felt like you could actually you knew reliably where something in the game was, like it was spawning based on a certain level of knowledge that you could get? You guys ever seen that in this game yet?
Lyria.
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, that was the problem.
Yeah. But like the problem was it was one mineral. Like there wasn't anything else that did that.
Okay.
Right. And it was so heavily skewed towards Quantanium because it was twice the value of Bexelite, but Bexelite capped out at 25%. Your chance to find a good Bexelite rock was almost non-existent. Right. The next materials down were a third of the value. So you have to make that decision. If I know where I can go mine Quantanium, find it reliably, right, and work from there. That's, you know, if you're out there mining for the fun of it, that's great, right? You're not looking at profits. It doesn't matter. But for somebody who's out there, let's say you're grinding on a rented prospector and you're trying to earn up to buying your own prospector or buying a mole, like those are, you know, time-based decisions you need to make.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, the Quantanium is a good point, how that used to be before, but I do like that, like, it at least works for the common materials now. In my opinion, they're one step removed. All you have to do at this point is be able to set a beacon on the map, and we've got the exploration profession, right? You find a mineral, you can tell people, hey, this is going to be here, and you get paid for it.
You could do it now. I did it the other day. And I plan on doing it a lot more. It's pretty fun. I just went out in a prospector. I mined the rocks I could mine, and I took a bunch of individual delivery missions instead of, you know, the ones that have a bunch of boxes, just a bunch of individual ones, put them in the prospector. And anytime there was a Quantanium or gold rock, I just dropped a box next to it. And I started spamming Gen Chat. Any multi-crew miners want to buy this? And then one guy bit and was like, I'll give you 400K. And I'm like, what? So like you can make good money, but I didn't take 400K because he just seemed like a noob and I wasn't sure if he even had a crew. So I said, I'll take 100K. And I gave him a Quantanium 30,000 mass and 2 gold 30,000 mass rocks.
Holy crap.
So for 100K, he did good if he was actually able to mine them. But I think you can do that stuff now. It's just very workaroundy.
That's not very salty Mike of you, dude. It's like sweet Mike.
Listen, I was salty Mike to get us to this point, okay? I was trying to get us here.
Rebranding coming soon.
And the beacon request, I think, is absolutely a must-have feature if we're going to move further, right? Because right now we're in this difficult spot where a solo prospector is now going to look at 2/3 of the rocks they come across are going to be outside of their capability range. They're going to have a lot of those rocks they're leaving behind, and if we don't have a formal way for them to say, hey, I'm going to drop a beacon here, like I've got a scan data that shows it's a good rock, drop that beacon, send it up, and for maybe 5,000 credits get paid for the location. And then somebody pulls it like a salvage claim mission, they can just claim it, it'll be tied to them, they can get the location and travel there.
Yeah, and think about the amount of time I took to set up to even be able to do that, right? I could have mined 2 refinery jobs. In that time.
That user experience is really lackluster in that regard. I mean, even like refueling, we've had refueling for a year and you still can't tell someone, hey, come here, I need help. You have to like go in global chat with them. It's the whole, I think they actually mentioned that the systemic services and systems team's working on the beacon system. I hope that gets like a good relaunch this year.
Yeah.
Mike, we still haven't gotten to hear what your favorite part of this whole 319 sort of refactor was.
Well, I think most people touched on like my favorite parts, things with the rocks and stuff like that. But one thing that we haven't touched on that I think is like paramount and is a huge change that made things so much better is minimum and maximum laser powers. So the fact that previously the 4 of us or 5 of us could have gone out mining, all of us in prospectors, right? And because the power lasers didn't make a difference, and we could all place our awesome helix or lancet lasers on a rock at 0% power. So, you know, we're not charging it up at all. And then Red Monster can go ahead and he can be the one to charge up and down. So we make the green zone huge. We make it really easy to mine and he does the job. So the 4 of us are sitting around doing nothing. He's doing everything. Now there's all sorts of communication and okay, this laser turns on first, that laser turns on second. Oh, wait, we're going a little bit too much power. Let's use the least powerful one here, and then you're managing. So everybody seems to have a role now. With the mole, it's also really great because some lasers have lower minimum percentage. So to try to explain it as best as possible, uh, instead of when on a really powerful laser like the Helix, as soon as I click my laser, it's 20% of that power is being injected into a rock. If
Yeah.
it's small, I'm gonna crack it and blow it up, maybe get in the red zone and damage my ship, make a mistake, right? So the need to be able to fine tune things with other lasers makes things a lot better. Previously, very similar to the way we were mining just Quantanium, all of us were only using Lancet lasers, right? That's what we used before, and then there were two specific modules that we used. That's it. Now literally everything can get used except for maybe the Lancet, and even then you can maybe argue some crazy scenario with a bunch of prospectors where you might use it
Yeah.
because charge you can charge in the green zone faster with it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, every laser gets used now, and there's reasons to do everything, and all the modules have a purpose as well.
It is so funny to me that you now end up coming across times where you're like, we need a less powerful laser. Like we
Yeah.
this is too much. And
It was
you
never
really have to
that way.
strategize. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. You talked about prospectors there. The update, a lot of people will say, was basically a nerf to the prospector, or, depending on how you look at it, a buff to the mole. Either way, things have changed for the prospector just as they have changed for the mole. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that they've killed solo mining? Have they made it not worth it? What's your view on it so far?
I feel so strongly about this. Do you guys mind if I go first?
Go for it.
Constant comments about I'm sure you guys are seeing it in all your guides, everything, right? Prospectors nerf.
Yeah.
Why would I care? It's not like it's so far from being nerfed. It's not even funny. It's so much more fun. You're able to break 15 to 20,000 mass rocks with it. I did a 16K mass with a rented prospector, right? So you're able to do all these things. It's just people don't like change, and I think people are very just confused for right now. There's a lot of information to kind of gather in and understand, so that it feels that it's nerfed, but it's just not. Like, no, I can't do everything now. Sorry. Like
Yeah.
this is the problem with our community in every aspect of this game's functionality at the moment is everybody seems to feel entitled to have everything and do everything with whatever they have, and that's just not how it's going to work. And this is just a lesson in that. Yes, I'm going to come across a 30K rock that I cannot break. If I don't have friends with me, I just need to move on and go to the next one. I'm still going to make money, right? I'm still going to
Yeah.
fill my cargo hold. I'm still going to go to the refinery and have something worth refining.
And it's about setting expectations moving forward, that the solo
Yes.
miner is not going to be capable of everything, right? And
But it's
solo
not-
mole.
It's still viable. It's still super
Yeah.
viable.
Oh yeah, like you're going to find rocks that are in your capability range, and also the fact is, if you don't find those rocks, like, okay, like you're going to need to bring friends in on some specific rocks if you really want to get the value out of them, or be
Yeah.
comfortable just leaving them behind.
Yep. And then you get the advantage of not having to split the money. You don't have to deal with the communication stuff because it can get very confusing, and you only have to swap out modules on one laser at a time. There's
Yeah.
advantages and disadvantages to both.
There's also the big fact that right now, while you're a solo miner, you're kind of trapped because of the way that the pods work. But as a solo miner, you could still have a friend in a cargo ship that is helping you make a ton more money than you would if you were alone. So solo mining might feel a little bit more difficult now, but there's always things on the horizon that are kind of making these things a little bit more natural. Do you guys all sort of agree with that view that this is a game that is going to have stuff that's unavailable to solo players, and they need to understand that, like, in order to really get the most out of it, you will have to encounter and cooperate with other players?
It's a bit of a tricky one, because a lot of the time, sort of, I'm sure everybody sees these comments along the lines of, I'm solo, I don't like playing with other people, and I really hope there is absolutely a place in the game for solo players. I've played other games solo. It's just a type of experience. Like sometimes you want to go your own way, but like when you have a conversation with someone who loves solo and wants to solo, it's because they don't want the hassle of dealing with other people. So they admit that it's hassle and harder work and takes additional effort, but then
want the same
maybe
reward.
something doesn't want to click that might then justify a higher reward.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, I think it's just a mentality shift that we should all probably just get used to.
That's a great point. I didn't look at it that way.
Well, I also think it could be unreliable for certain people to find a reliable group or those who are, we've all had bad experiences getting into groups and MMOs, right? That you're going to find people that are just absolute dickheads, right?
Yep.
And that could ruin somebody's desire to get into a group situation.
There's this guy Drail in my org. No matter what, the rock explodes. I can't save this guy. When we had that big Quantanium rock, I told him, I was like, you just can't be on a laser, dude. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. You know?
I think we all need one, right?
That's very funny.
Yeah.
I think that's part of why, correct me if I'm wrong, in my opinion, I think part of why this game ends up taking so long is because they're trying to build it in a way that does exclude people. Like, they're building engineering, for instance. They started to preview this and they talked about how you might have to tune components and you might have to run around and change things out and cool down things and heat things, like all this stuff. And you would see people in the comments being like, this is too much. They're going to break the game. Nobody's going to want to do this, without realizing the whole point is because, yes, there are professions that not everybody's going to do. And like somebody else is going to take that time to do it because they really like mining. They really like getting out there and slapping a gadget on the rock. Whereas you might just be somebody who wants to shoot a laser at a 5K common yield rock. I think that's important with this game. And I wish they would kind of communicate that a little bit more when they talk about these game mechanics.
I think it's really important to note for the multiplayer, like the multiplayer versus solo debate, and it really is a debate in the Star Citizen community, and it should not be. Yeah. Star Citizen is an MMO. It is a massively multiplayer online simulated game, whatever you want to call it, alpha, whatever. Every MMO that I've ever played has always had an extremely in-depth single player experience. World of Warcraft, Evenline, a bunch of other games. I can play single player and have a great time. I do not get to experience the things that the multiplayer people get to experience, but that's fine. I have plenty of content to do myself. And right now in Star Citizen, still 99% of the content in the game right now is single player. It's solo. The bounties, the deliveries, doing trade, mining, while we now do have multi-crew mining as a thing, it still feels very much primarily like a solo thing until we get refinery ships, please soon. And it's a very weird argument to me every time I hear people say, no, I need to be able to, as a solo player, be able to experience every single thing that the multiplayer people get to do. I've heard people say, I need to be able to, as a solo player Javelin owner, compete against a Javelin that is fully crewed with people. It is a ridiculous a thing to think, in my opinion, because that is not what this game is. That is not what the majority of the game is. If I want to go solo play Valorant, I can. I can play solo deathmatch. I should not be able to have the exact same experience as people doing 5v5s competitively.
One thing I always say back when people say they want to be able to solo a javelin is that means that an org of 50 people is bringing 50 javelins out.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Somebody just give them a plaque for funding the game. How about, so we've talked about mole mining, prospector mining. We touched on rock mining a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about FPS mining. I don't think too much really changed here other than like a new material, but how about for just people who are interested in this kind of mining? Like, does FPS mining, for those who have tried it, does it come off as something that's useful to do? Should you be picking up and grabbing that mining gadget and or attachment and putting it in your backpack, or just completely ignore it?
I mean, they did change some things.
Yeah.
Right? There's a little change.
Okay.
I think
I have no idea what they are, so.
Yeah, I mean the main change is like the addition of Genolite, but it's only going to be in those sand caves, right? There's a few specific locations, and I actually haven't had a chance to go hunting for that. That was one of my plans this weekend, was to go see if we can, how long it takes to find it. But yeah, the FPS mining, your best bet is to go to one of those, like the Calthrope mine, one of those, one of the cave mines. Go in there with a backpack. I think the benefit is we do now have on the mining attachment, there's an extraction mode that feeds them right into your backpack. So
Yeah.
That was, I was playing around with that while folks were rock mining, and I just got out and made sure it worked. But aside from the prison gameplay loop, I mean, there's nothing forcing you to do it, but it is a really cheap way to get in and start making some credits. I'd say 50,000 an hour is still pretty good, and then if you're in there hunting for Genolite, like that's gonna be a big boost. So
honestly, 50,000 an
great for a
hour.
new player, right?
Yeah, if you're jumping in and like you're literally your first time in the game, you load in, you grab the multi-tool, you get in your ship, you go to a cave, and you make 50,000. That's not bad. That's like running a few bunkers.
Yeah, and the fact is, you can loot those multi-tools from most outposts. Like everyone I've been to, just running the loot between loot boxes. I've found a multi-tool and at least one attachment. It might take a second outpost to get one, but
I also really liked the sort of tone they gave it when they were talking about it in that ISC where they introduced Genolite. The whole idea that maybe hand mining isn't a profession in itself, but it's more something that if there's more push down the exploration route, the sort of search and investigate missions, you might then find yourself down a cave for another reason, and then Genolite, like
Yeah, I would say that was like one of the more disappointing things that came out of the 319 is it sort of set the expectation that the caves that actually had content in them were going to be the ones that you found Janolite, and I guess that was
Yeah.
more of a future discussion of what the plans were. And I'm with you, Loud. The plans are fantastic. I think it's good. You're gonna do other things, and then it gives you a reason to bring that attachment with you.
Yeah.
Well, they did say those gemstones are going to be components for future crafting and tuning, right? That, as engineering gameplay comes in, as crafting gameplay gets more developed, it might be more of a necessity to go spelunking for an hour.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's why it's important with all the stuff that they've done is the goal would be for the crafting aspects of it for most people, but they've made the experience like actually enjoyable instead of we've all seemed to have played some other MMOs, just clicking over and over again on a node and waiting for it to refresh is horrible. And I think that they really kind of nailed a decent experience of what would be considered mindless gameplay in other games.
You guys,
and that's what hooked me on mining was the
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
that I think is one of the biggest things that's talked about when it comes to this kind of gameplay. We can look at something like Starfield, where mining is which is a comparable game. It's not the same type of game, but it's a space game, and we know that they have mining. We've seen it demonstrated. It's basically just shooting a laser at a rock real quick. It shatters. You pick it up. It's like a very straightforward RPG implementation. Then there are things like Elite Dangerous, which is like you can get into that deep core mining where you're sending stuff into the asteroid and cracking it from the inside. Star Citizen is obviously nowhere near complete in terms of mining, but like as that basic version that you talked about, and let's look at FPS mining since we spent the whole time talking about ship mining. You guys like where it is?
I don't think
Not
there's
really.
enough. I don't think there's like enough minerals or variety or uh I guess like
locating them, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just weird.
That's the number one problem. You are going to need to be within like 500 meters on the planet's surface to be able to find those. Or sometimes they're like a pimple on the side of an asteroid, right? That your best place to locate these is going to be caves. You're not going to be finding them randomly unless you're really lucky. And I think that goes into the surveying and the scanning gameplay that right now I think the range limits and the lack of filtering options we have in scanning is detrimental to FPS mining specifically. But a lot of game aspects could be improved if we have the ability to say, I only want to see signals within X range of RS values, right? So give me up to like 500 RS, and that's going to filter out a lot of, that'll show you only the FPS minables.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I agree
think
with that.
scanning is not just detrimental to the mining. I think scanning is detrimental to the game overall at the moment for pirates, for cargo haulers, for salvagers looking for what cargo's on there. Scanning is probably the most broken feature that. I mean, you can't ever say anything is the most broken feature, but there's
Star map.
the star
Yeah.
map's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I think scanning is something that really actually holds many aspects of it touches so many things and holds
Yeah.
every element of the game back.
Yeah. I mean,
and it changes every patch too, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it's the one feature that has no consistency.
No one touches it seems like, and it always is changing. It's like, what's going, there's never a patch note about anything happening to scanning, and it's never the same, and it always sucks.
yeah. So supporting features wise, the ability to scan things in the caves, the materials that we have access to, those are the kinds of things you want to see improved. But like the idea of taking a multi-tool or a tool of some sort, pointing it at the rock, shooting a laser into it, balancing it out, and cracking it feels like an engaging enough version of mining, or?
I think it has to have the end feature. Like, I just think selling things isn't that interesting.
Right.
Like Red
That's
was
fair.
saying, if I turn that into something useful,
Yeah.
that is because that's too much like the MMO mining. So the MMO mining is not really about the mining; it's about the crafting aspect. Like, I found this good material, now I could do something with it. The hand tools stuff is too simple to where I think that needs to have that next step to it, where mining has refining. uh, Rock mining and hand mining do not, but at least rock mining, there's way more to it. There's
Yeah.
more gems. There's possibility of filling up and then maybe wanting to move a box to someone else. So there's just like a little bit more where hand mining is just kind of like whatever.
I think one thing we can look at though is like there's sort of a danger when you've got experienced players talking about a loop that they want more complexity
Yes.
to challenge their experience. And one thing which hand mining does is, it really adds a lot of stabilizers for beginners.
Sure.
Particularly if we got like, you go to this cave's got gems, and then you just need this tool and it costs a couple of 1,000 credits. And then you don't need to worry about flying a ship. You don't need to worry about sort of switching mining modes. Just work out the very basic of the mini game.
Yep.
Hold
Yeah,
the
that's why I
green
was
zone.
more. That's why I was more talking about like okay, what does the gem that I'm mining do?
Mhm.
Right, and because the actual you need that entry level experience for the player, like you're on it 100%, just like similar to what they were talking about with Salvage, right? Where hull stripping, they were thinking about making it crazy, and then they decided not to. Like, this is our version of that, and I think it needs to stay that way. I don't want to make it more complicated. I think the exciting part that could happen to hand mining is I need this thing. So that's why I'm doing it. And that's really all I would want to change it with it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and a lot of I think first response to the complaints about Beam Citizen is like those beams make a really easy to pick up and easy to understand gameplay mechanic that any new player can get into, that can then like build on top of that with, like you're saying, either the rewards of crafting and planning and all that kind of stuff, or with further things like hole munching. And the problem that you're mentioning with the first person tool, how when you're doing this hand mining, yeah, it's fun, but it might not be the sort of end all for that path, is kind of how the RMC with the hand salvaging is. It's like you can hand salvage, but right now, since there's not really much to repair or do with it, there's no point in selling it. You never get enough to sell it and make any money with it. So it's kind of just there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the overall sort of game loop then that is mining. At the end of all of this, do you guys feel like, again, ignoring the fact that there's no crafting and refining to really take advantage of this, but do you feel like this is in a good enough position after this latest update that mining can now kind of reflect what they should be doing as game loops? Or does it not quite feel deep enough yet?
I know Red's a big no on this one.
I'll let you guys. I've got some strong opinions, so go ahead and run first.
Yeah.
Will.
I think that everything Red says is
Croncy.
wrong. No, so I think that the mining mechanic itself is in a good state, as in like put power into rock, break rock, get rock stuff, right? That's its very basic core. The way that we search for them is its own mechanic. That's scanning. We were just talking about that, right? The way that you refine it, that's its own mechanic. So I think all of those sort of things outside of it obviously do need a lot of work on. The only thing that I would do to mining is, balancing an introduction of more materials. That's it. I don't think they need to bring in, a fourth type of module. Like we've got the lasers, we've got the gadgets, we've got the modules. You don't need to get more in depth there. I don't think you necessarily need to get more in depth with how you mine, although I would like to see a cool, weird way to alien mine, but that's a different thing. So I think in essence, it's in a pretty good spot. Just, balancing extra rocks, locations.
Yeah, I'm sort of in there's maybe diminishing returns to sinking a lot more time into developing mining further. But like in terms of the improvements you could make to the game by improving mining more, compared to developing all the things that should go around mining, like the crafting that Mike's talking about. I think it's good enough for now.
Okay.
And I guess before we get to Red, I'm sort of starting to lean in his direction a little bit. Like when you look at the placement of common materials, where like there is only some here and they are not in other places, I would like to see more of that, with not just high level but the mid level stuff as well. I would like to see, if I am looking for this, it's a better decision to go here. So if you want to min max, you can. But and I think it just kind of would make a little bit more sense or whatever, right? But from the hard part is exactly what LoudGuns said, is there's a lot of things. This is the EUPU team that is touching this and owns this stuff, and there are a lot of things that it seems like they're juggling at this point, with resource management, salvage, tractor beams they were talking about on Star Citizen Live yesterday. So it comes down to, am I happy with it? No. Will I ever be happy with it? No, right? Like you always want things to be better and awesome and everything, right? So it can always be better. But am I comfortable with where we are now? And I think this is a great foundation to build off of. Yes, but you need to build other things next. Like you need to flesh out salvage. We need to see crafting, and then those things can inform how to do this stuff better. But in the end, I still think the distribution of stuff being a little bit more jackpot, like a jackpot kind of situation, is maybe not as good. But I also like the idea of every single one of us can just go to our favorite moon and mine and have the chance to find quantanium, have the chance to find gold as well. So it's just a very weird thing, and I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. But
Okay.
overall, I think they should probably, for the most part, aside from the stuff they're doing in 19.1 to fix some problems that we had in 19, should just leave it and move on. But with the promise of coming back to it and bringing it to a better place somewhat soonish.
All right. And Red Monster, give us the big summary.
So I will say the fundamental mechanics of mining, the power management, the equipment that we have, the variety in the combat materials, I think they've done a fantastic job with. It's still my favorite game loop because of those things. Now, what they've done with the mineral deposits, if you look at what quantanium deposits used to be, right? And I know we were all very deeply familiar with that, but you would have a lot of the 2.1% quantanium. You'd find a lot of 2.1% rocks, And then you'd have those jackpot moments where you got one up to 50, right? If you got an 8,000 mass rock at 40% Quantanium, you were having a great day, right? And you might get 1 or 2 of those a week. But what made it nice is that there was that variety, and you always could know and expect, okay, Q-type deposit, Q-type asteroids, or Quantanium deposit. I know what's going to be in there. So what they've gone through and done now are common materials are kind of they're location based, but they're going to be in everything. And then they've made it so that every other material spawns as a percentage chance. And the rarer the material, generally, the lower chance that it has to spawn. So you end up going out and you scan 65 generic rocks. You don't care what type it is. You're scanning everything because everything can have one of those higher tier materials that you're actually looking for, right? I think what they need to do is the other thing is they are also pretty homogeneous in the parameters for those rocks. Aside from density with gold, Bexlite, and Terranite, there is a gradient there, from 200 to like 680. But the instability is all 5.5, 6, and 7. The resistance is 50%, 60%. They're all equally difficult, with the exception that gold is going to be a larger mass rock and require a little bit more power. I think they need to focus on 3 tiers. Make 1 tier of materials a high density that just needs raw power. Make another tier that is all highly unstable, but maybe less dense. Have that be its own tier, and then have another that's highly resistant. Go for those 3 archetypes of materials. Start with the top 3, gold, Bexlite, and Terranite, and then start pairing them with other uncommon materials and align those to the common materials that make the most sense. And then you might have a potential for 6 different minerals to show up in a rock instead of 16, right? Bring that list down and make it so that a deposit type like atacamite, granite, gneiss, the asteroid types, give them a unique combination of elements that can spawn. They don't all need to be like jackpot rocks, right? But bring that in, bring the variety so that we have a combination of small materials, small percentages with the occasional like rare boost up to a much higher percentage.
Yeah, and then like it could be even as far as like biome based or planet based, is you're gonna find more nice rocks or Q type rocks or whatever, right?
Yeah, and they've got some biomes already in the game files. I haven't seen any variety there as far as what's spawning, but you can certainly, once you align the deposit type to some of those minerals, give them some exclusivity for the deposit type. That's going to drive more of the variation in. Right now, everywhere has the same percentage chance within a certain margin to find Terranite, right? You're out there searching 65 generic rocks because there's no set place it's going to happen in. So
yeah. I was actually going to ask, in terms of the location-based spawning, would you guys rather it be specific to like geographic features rather than like just a moon or something like that?
I think that could add a really cool angle. Sort of like learning specific geography actually gives a. So we touched on it before, the idea of bringing exploration in as a loop.
If we had a good map, maybe, right?
But even now, sort of having people in your org go out, scout different locations. If you establish something like material X spawns more around mountains, you can send people out to be like, right, well, let's cross-reference this. I know this is likely to spawn on Microtech. I know it's likely to spawn around mountains. Microtech's a terrible example because it's just full of mountains. But but you send out people to specifically find good drop-in points for those features. That would be pretty cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, like Magda's a great example. Yeah, Magda's got the big blue plains, right? Where if that had a unique spawn for those specific areas, that would be interesting.
Do you guys still do that? I go to those like in my brain, I still think that there's more Hadanite at the very white spots of Ariel or something, and I still go, even though I don't think it's really a thing. I still do it anyway.
My entire start in life is just a whole bunch of heuristics and little fishwives' tales myself.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of how it always is. Like there was always you never really knew if moving the laser around on a rock actually made a difference, but people would tell you it did. Other people would say like, no, that doesn't do anything different to the mineable.
Can we break that down? That drives me insane. Is like if I'm
There-
struggling, I think people really this is a change that's coming in 19.1. I think people really maybe don't understand, and I trust you guys more to understand than I do. But isn't it just instability and it's just pure luck if the instability happened to rise up and you
well,
were
there-
able to break the
Yeah,
rock?
I think it's
Like
probably
that's it.
confirmation bias of sorts. Like you see it
So
work and you're like,
there-
oh, let me go back to that spot, or something like that.
There
It is
are,
also
there are
it's
definitely weak
it's
spots.
Yeah.
There are
There,
weak
there, are
spots.
certain, there are certain weak spots on a rock. So like the problem is that what some people do is they move their laser around, and in moving their laser around, they have hit a weak spot, and then they see it move, and then they think it's moving the laser around which did it, when
And
actually
there's
it's touching the weak spot. So what you need to do is you need to search around and find a weak spot, and then hold the laser in that weak spot.
So
maybe that would be the one thing that would need to change is like some module gadget, something that tells you where a weak spot is, something like
yeah,
that.
just
because
a
there's
little red X on the HUD.
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
way of knowing right now,
like
right?
Rust.
You're just guessing. Is
Correct.
there any official documentation where CIG comes out and says there are weak spots in mineable rocks?
Red.
Because
They don't
that's
say it,
that's
but it's there.
for me. That's where it comes down to. Like we don't have an official explanation of the gameplay. So how can we make the official, or not official, but how can we make a spot on guide to properly tell people this is how it works? You can trust that.
Because we
Yeah.
don't need them to say it because it's in the game files.
Okay.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's not something I've been able to extract from those. Now, I don't look at the visual assets that they're using for these rocks, but like we actually went out and I tried to run a test. I had the same rock, it was 0 to it had a pretty high optimal charge window, and we tried a couple of different methods, and we found like holding the laser in one spot versus doing a figure 8 or just randomly orbiting the rock at a fixed distance. Like none of those seem to make any difference, at least in previous patches.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the evidence of a weak spot or like going after the bright spots or the intersections. Like none of that to me has seemed to be more than just confirmation bias.
I've seen them in the game files like years ago. I haven't like looked at game files in many years, but they were there like 4 years ago. But
The only explanation I've heard that makes sense is that because it's a hit scan type beam, if you're rotating in a circle, you're potentially getting more contacts per second or per tick.
Mhm.
So that's like tripling or quadrupling your effective laser power for a short period of time. But
Yeah, see, and my thing is that I love the mystery of it. I see people mentioning that in chat. Like I like the idea of a game mechanic that you kind of have to figure out on your own. That's how I think exploration is going to be with the signatures you have to detect, hopefully. But with this, we're playing it, but we're also testing it. And in order to test it and give the right feedback, I feel like we kind of need to know for sure if something can or cannot be tested in a certain way. So it'd be nice to hear about that. They don't have to write it down anywhere, but it would be cool to hear one of the devs who's working on mining be like, yeah, this is how we want it to be. It would also, I think, give us a little bit more of a vision of what they want this to go towards, which, perfect segue, is our final topic today. We're going to talk about how mining is going to expand in the future. We've got like the Orion. Obviously, things are going to have to change in a big way for that. But there's also a design document on their website. Obviously, it's very old, but I'm sure you guys have seen it before, where they talk about a lot of different things, like you said, scanning the interior of the asteroid to find a weak spot, or sending something through the asteroid to get a sense of its density, things like that. So thought we could just open up a conversation and talk a little bit about whether you think they'll implement that kind of stuff into mining, and where you think mining will go with things like the Orion, possibly with ore veins and stuff like that. LoudGuns, why don't you start us off with this one?
I mean, I think sort of a good development would just be taking what they've done with Salvage in 3.19 and building in mining missions. I mean, it's sort of near term possible to just take some of that guesswork out of it. You know, you are buying a mining claim, it will likely contain this many resources, and then you can sort of take the same route you've done with Salvage and give you the safe ones for people who just want a good solo rock without the hassle of finding it, but scale it up to the illegal missions or this is in complete sort of nullsec, like no com array coverage, and by the way, a bunch of other people are going to get the same information. You're going to be in competition with them.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're planning those missions for the next update, right?
Yeah. And we see that right now with salvage missions too, and I'm excited to see that translate into mining.
Yeah. Croncy, what about you? What do you think in terms of like how can they build on mining and make it a little bit more exciting on larger scales?
Yeah, so there's basically, in my opinion at least, there's probably two things that'll be coming in many, many years. I don't expect to see them anytime soon, and I wouldn't want to see them soon, kind of for reasons that Mike said earlier. We've got Orion mining, which is likely going to be an incredibly different way to mine, where we're actually going to be munching the rocks with the front of the Orion. We're going to be launching basically missiles into large asteroids to scan them. It's a very, very different thing. It's about the same sort of leap, it seems like, from going from like an ROC to a prospector. And so, that's we're probably going to see that sort of stuff there, which I'm really excited for. But the thing that I'm probably more excited for is the concept of ground refineries and ground mining resource collection sites. They're likely to change what mining is for the majority of people. It's likely going to become kind of a like leave, whatever, a set and leave sort of system. That I think, if you are not a person who's doing mining right now, pretty much everyone's going to be wanting to do some sort of resource collection, and that's the major way that they're going to be doing it. And I don't mind that at all. I think it's a really good system to do, as long as it's less profitable than having a big mining org.
Yeah.
Okay. Red Monster, what do you think? What are you wanting to see in the future?
I mean, obviously, I need to put my Orion to work. So bringing that in, giving me a reason to haul 500 units of quartz, right? Bringing that into the crafting gameplay, the base building. Yeah, ground-based refineries would be fantastic, especially ones that you might be able to get with a player-owned refinery. And diving in there, I'm a big fan of like the Expanse. I got the Galaxy for the refining capabilities there. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. What I'm looking forward to the most coming up next is that refining gameplay, the ability to tailor that.
Yeah, we've been talking about it the whole time. Just kind of that added ability to do things with the minerals afterward is going to be a nice way to expand it. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean that it's hard to follow up on those. Those are pretty much where the logical places that mining could go. The only thing that I would love to see maybe change just a little bit is more ROC variety, things that are outside of ships. That's why things like refineries on the ground, like Croncy said, are really cool. I would love to see maybe more variety, more things to that. I always thought it was very, very weird that there was just this magical, these gem deposits that are only mineable by this certain thing, right? Or only extractable. It's all very weird. So the thing that I would like to see is kind of bringing everything together in some way, shape, or form. We know that this RSI ship that's coming out apparently is like a mining ship that can also put a ROC inside of it, right? Like something like that. So it's like combining everything together. They tried this with the asteroids originally. So you break an asteroid, but then you can hand mine it. I would kind of like to see that all come together
Yeah,
more in some way. Like,
yeah,
why can't my prospector extract gems and put them in the hopper and vice versa?
yeah.
Why can't my
It's
mole
like,
break smaller rocks that are around? A purple rock that you can see with a prospector could be a yellow with a mole, and you could break that maybe, or an
Hmm.
ROC, and you could break that, right? That would be
yeah,
cool.
the
Mm.
immersive sim elements of the game. I think the more they lean into that, the more fun and creative we could get with stuff like mining.
Yeah, like there's no reason why a mining operation shouldn't be we're all sitting in the same spot for multiple days. Some of the people are mining gems, some of the people are mining minerals, and then all the refining is being done there and then sent somewhere else, right? Like that's my dream experience. Outside of the Orion, obviously, which might look something like that, but in space.
I really do hope that we get mining like what you have behind you on your screen, Mike.
Same.
Yeah, the ability to like drill into an actual ore, a vein, like you're saying, to me sounds like something that you could be like, okay, there's this vein here. They could even make a mission out of it, right? Kind of like the Ghost Hollow thing. Just be like, okay, there's a mining vein, and whoever controls it can just continuously mine from it. And like that would be, I think, a lot of fun and give us some persistent resources that people could actually claim and fight over.
Yeah.
What do you guys think the tractor beams will do for mining? Do you think they'll, because we know that asteroids that are supposed to be mineable should be interactable with it. Do you think that will change up the gameplay in any major way?
Probably not until we get to the Orion, most likely. There's things that you could possibly do by, chucking a big rock into the hull of like a C2 if it would fit, and then maybe there's some gameplay elements there. But yeah, I don't think at the moment that it would be very relevant.
The only thing might be moving like not good purple rocks that you don't want to mine out of the way could be a
True, yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, I think the potential for organization there goes up. You're going to have a 315p that's helping filter the post break, but if you have the ability to bring in a full like high value asteroid to a group of moles that's all like just breaking down rocks, and that's their job, right? Consolidating the good materials, ejecting the bad.
Yeah. Have like a spot not far from a refinery station where you're just bringing in asteroids to a bunch of moles sitting around so they don't have to fly around to each rock. Could be really cool to see with the bigger orgs.
It's less the tractor beams and it's more being able to remove your bags and properly refine. It's more the things that would need to change that tractor beams interact with is like my party can refine my ore, right? My party can sell my ore, things like that.
All right. Well, any last things that you guys want to say about mining? Any let's say either things that you have really appreciated with this update, last thoughts, or things that, like you said, with the refining, you absolutely would like to see as the next step for mining.
I'm just happy they listen. They listen and they're actioning it.
Yeah. I would say give us beacons, right?
Yeah.
You're going to leave prospectors out with, too larger rocks. Give them an option to sell that, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I would say like this has been my favorite patch of really the entire time I've been playing Star Citizen, because it's just that impactful to my main gameplay loop. But come on, CRG, it's time for our mining dynamic event. Where is it? Let's see it.
Yep.
Yeah. Like we're all gonna have to make one probably for like a little competition or something. Might be fun.
Yeah.
You guys stole all the best ones, but to be honest, I'm honestly just very happy with it. It's just you do have to sometimes say when we're probably quick enough calling out when CIG get things wrong, and this isn't perfect, but this was such a huge step in the right direction. And it was the first time I finished making a mining guide, and then the first thing I did afterwards was I went out and did more mining.
Yeah.
Usually I'm in the mood to just do any other game loop at that point, but this was the first time I was like, right, back out I go.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's
been
hard
good.
to look at it and not say this is the first piece of Star Citizen gameplay that is not tier 0.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing, that's what I'm seeing with people in comments on the videos about this stuff. They're like, I stepped away from mining. I have wanted to see some sort of like a challenge that's not just more instability or something or harder to find rocks, but this has actually mixed things up and complicated it enough that you get different possibilities with different types of groups. I think that's pretty cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this talk about mining. I hope that this was plenty impactful and informative to people who are watching. I hope we came to some form of consensus of how this has impacted the game and if it's good enough, quote unquote. we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. I'm going to let them tell you one more time where they can find your content, of course, or where you can find their content. Of course, it's linked down below in the show notes, but we're only going to stop for a minute here because we do have a Q&A session planned for right afterwards. Don't have too many questions that were input on our Discord server, so we'll get through that pretty quickly. But if you guys stick around, we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll get to answering those questions. So before we go, SaltEMike, let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, twitch.tv/SaltEMike and youtube.com/SaltEMike, I guess. I'm hopefully finishing some of my guides somewhat soon. I decided I was going to wait because it seemed like there was too much things in flux with 319 and 319.1 that I was like, I feel like they're going to change some things, and it looks like they might have. So I kind of put everything on hold, and I'm waiting on that. So as far as mining stuff goes, but my org, and we've been getting together, and it's been hard to do org stuff. I think Tomato and I have talked about that a little bit. It's tough. Running an org's really hard, and everybody seems like mega gung-ho this patch, and everybody wants to go mining, and so I think we'll be doing a lot more of that. So yeah, excited for it.
I like it. Red Monster?
Yeah, you can find me on youtube.com/RedMonsterSC or twitch.tv/RedMonsterSC. I've got updates for the 319 Prospector. I'm working through my Salvage and the group mole, solo mole. I've got those coming up. So, yeah.
Cool. LoudGuns?
So yeah, youtube.com/LoudGuns. Or if you really value inconsistency, then I'm also on Twitch under LoudGuns. But you know, but that's for those who don't care about waiting for a stream. So.
And Croncy, my man.
Yeah, you can find me on twitch.tv/Croncy, YouTube on Croncy as well. I've been doing a lot more YouTube stuff the last maybe half month. Or you can also find me on youtube.com/SaltEMike Reacts every now and then. Make sure you go.
Makes a cameo.
Once in a while.
Yeah,
all of you guys.
Yeah.
Well,
all
yeah,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find me all those places. We do a lot of group content. We do a lot of mining, and a lot of messing around and exploding.
Cool. All right, and thank you guys all for coming and watching or listening to this. It's ad-free, of course, on all audio platforms, but you can watch it on the second YouTube channel, and of course, check out the main channel. This should be up for all who are watching live soon, and for those who are watching after the fact, please join us live next time. I've been your host, Space Tomato. Thanks again to all my guests for joining us. We will be back with the Q&A in just a minute, and I'll see you all next time.